Do you love to write, but do you sometimes feel that time is running out? Well, our winning author here tonight on Writer Talks is going to share an inspiring message about how it's never too late to go back to school, to write those novels, to write those short stories, and embark on a career centered around your passion. I am so excited tonight on Writer Talks. I'm Elizabeth Ann Atkins, and I interview the winners of our monthly short story contests. And with us tonight is novelist Nancy Thorne, live from Toronto area, Canada. And she is going to share some really inspiring messages today and tell us about her brand new young adult novel. Welcome, Nancy.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Happy to be here.
Yay, I'm thrilled that you're here. I love your message about how you've gone back to school and you've written two novels and 12 short stories, and you're just an example of following your passion because you're now writing full time. That's
That's,
amazing.
that's right.
Mhm.
And so go ahead.
Can you talk about how you led up to this time, like your career in pediatrics and how you evolved to be able to do what you're doing now?
Well, it's funny. I don't know if it was that I evolved because when I was in grade school, if you had asked me in grade 5 what I was, I would have told you that I was already an author. But
I
the
love
back,
it.
absolutely. I loved everything to do with words. But back then, as a girl, you weren't expected to be a writer. You were expected to be a teacher, a nurse, things like that. You weren't, a writer was too creative to even think about. My parents thought that was just the silliest notion, really. So I should go into something else. And it never left me, that thought. And so I ended up actually working with children, which is what I loved, at a medical assistant in downtown Toronto's Hospital for Sick Children. And I loved it there. So I stayed with what I loved that way. I always knew that I wanted to be around children, and that was the best job I could have had. But it never left me about writing. It was always in the back of my mind. And now and then I would write a short story, but that was about it. I thought it was just a silly dream, honestly. And that's what I would love authors to know, that you can think that you want to write. And then you can think, well, that's just ridiculous. I'll never be a writer. But if it's there, it's already there. So you're already on your way to being an author, if that's how you're thinking already.
I love it.
Yeah. So what brought me here was, before I retired 8 years ago, I said to my husband, I still think that I should be a writer for some reason. I just said, I think that's what I was meant to do, as silly as it sounds. So I'm going to take a night course at a college, which is what I did near here.
Uh-huh.
And I sat in that room and listened to the professor talk about writing. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is why it hasn't left me, because I feel so comfortable here. And so I just
Oh.
kept up with it. And then I started writing. And then I started taking classes at the University of Toronto in
Mhm.
creative writing, which I'll finish the end of this year, I'll be finished.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you. And so, yeah, that's kind of my path. It had twists and turns, and I raised two sons in the meantime, but I ended up doing what I thought I should do.
That's amazing. I love it, love it, love
Thanks,
it. So,
Elizabeth.
you've written two novels. Can you talk about your latest young adult novel,
My
please?
latest young adult novel is called The Somewhere I See You Again.
Uh-huh.
And this is the cover. And it's about two poor high school girls that decide to save their families from financial ruin by hitchhiking across Canada to where one of their ex-boyfriends lives. Now, he's wealthy, so they figure they can blackmail him, but they have to go cross country from the Toronto area all the way to Vancouver in 1971 so they can achieve that goal to save their families.
Oh,
So, of course,
wow.
they have all kinds of problems along the way that they have to solve, and issues that come up, and they meet a lot of people, and In Canada in 1971, there were a lot of draft dodgers that came to Canada because of the Vietnam War. And I'm talking like I know what I'm talking about because my girlfriend and I did exactly that. We would never blackmail anyone, but we decided for 2 summers to hitchhike across Canada. And we met so many draft dodgers along the way. So we learned all about the Vietnam War, all about these fellows and their families. And I could envision what I was writing, which helped.
Wow, that's amazing.
That's it.
Oh my
Was quite,
gosh.
they were the best summers of my life, though. I learned so much. I was so young. We were just teenagers. We were still in high school.
Uh-huh.
And our parents thought we were taking the train, but we hitchhiked.
Oh my gosh. And you lived to tell about it.
And we did, barely at times, but we did. Yeah, and we had no money, and we just did the best we could do. It was a wonderful time, though.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
amazing. So, Nancy, that theme of young adults and your Decade of the Colorist, one of the winning short stories here in our monthly contest, which will be published in our 2020 anthology of international writers. Your other story is called Welcome to Anti-Agonies, and that's a winner as well. But Decade of the Colorist is about two teenage girls preparing for prom. So what is it about young adult that you love?
That's a good question. I always say that a vital part of me stayed behind. That's the only way that I can envision it and describe it to you, because it feels like it's easy for me to go back and write about when I was a teenager because I still have those memories and they're very vivid and they don't want to leave. And so if I can write about the memories, it's almost like I can relive those times that are so clear in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
And even if I can just go back to those times with my writing, I can change things as well. So if something happened that I feel like I had no control over back then in my writing, I can change them so that to the way that I would have liked them to have worked out.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And so I've always wanted to write for young adults and children too.
Oh, I love that. That's wonderful. Does your background in pediatrics inspire this passion?
I think so. I absolutely think so, especially now I'm getting into more, I'm writing a book for middle grade children, so the 9 to 12-year-old set.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure that working with pediatrics had something to do with that too. And hopefully that age group will like what I'm writing as well.
Uh-huh.
But I can definitely tell you that my passion up to now is for the teenage years. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And I've tried to write authentically, but I've also tried to write with a purpose. So I'm trying to connect with the young adults, not just like a fiction story that doesn't mean anything. I'm trying to write for young adults with a purpose, with meaning.
Very, very nice. Young adults are so impressionable and so eager to learn. They're like sponges. So do you see yourself as sort of a teacher?
Perhaps I see myself as a bit of a teacher, but really I like to bring issues to the forefront. So my first book, Victorian Town, is a time travel book. The main character goes back to 1876. And of course, things are different in 1876. The morals are different. The weather is different. No one knows when she talks about her allergies, what is an allergy, that type of things. And back then there were always monarch butterflies, for instance, were everywhere, of course. So there are issues now that we're facing with the environment that I have tried to put in my first book so that they can see the difference of how life was back then, not just with the way that girls were raised or expected to behave, which was totally different than the present time, but with the world itself, with the feeling of the world and how it was and how it's changed through the decades.
Mm-hmm. I love that. It's wonderful. Fascinating. And then that's a theme that permeates your short stories as well, correct?
It does. You don't have to go back far to see the changes. And the one story that you mentioned, Decade of the Colorist, that's authentic too. And that was based on something that happened to me, although it's fiction because I've added passages, but the theme I was trying to get across in that short story is time. So we don't have as much time to do things as we think we do. I know that I'm striving now to do what I've always wanted to do in my life, but there's sometimes there's time limits, and you just can't do exactly what you would like to do in life if you don't do it at a certain time. And that was the message of Decade of the Colorist, because when I first met this hair colorist, which is what he was a salon colorist. He was wonderful. He was full of energy. He affected me so much because we had the most wonderful conversation. He bubbled with energy and his future, and he just thought it was all laid out for him and he had all the time in the world, which is why I put that sentence in the short story itself, because it turned out he didn't have all the time in the world. And I found him again because he hadn't left the salon that he told me that he was going to start his own business, and he was so excited about it. But I found him 10 years later because he hadn't done what he wanted to do. And when I asked him, because he wouldn't have remembered me, I would only have remembered him.
Right.
So when I asked him what happened over the past 10 years, he was so different in his speech. He was sad. He thought it was too late for him to open his own salon, just in the 10 years that had gone by. And he seemed like a different person to me. And that affected me, as I say, so I felt so sorry for him. And then I probably thought about him for a long time. When I started writing short stories and tried to go through my mind about what I would really like to write about and the message I would like to get out, what he came to mind, and about the time, and what a shame that was that he did not open his own salon, which was it was his passion. You know what? It felt like he had lost his passion. And so that's why I wrote that story.
Wow. And that's so consistent with the theme that we're discussing tonight, that it's never too late. But for some people, if you give up, it's too late.
If you give up, which is right. And that's, and that in the story, that's exactly what I wanted to say by the end of the story, that it's not really, it's only too late if you think that way.
Right.
So,
well, you're an excellent writer. I love how the stories draw you in. You have vivid dialogue. It's very energetic. It's crisp, really, really enjoyable to read. So everybody watching, you're welcome, Nancy. Not posted yet on the website, but do watch for twosisterswriting.com/winning stories. And soon, Nancy Thorne's 2 winning stories will be posted there, and they'll be published in our international anthology of stories. So very exciting. So Nancy, can you talk about what it's like to be writing full time? Like, do you write all day? What is that like?
For aspiring writers out there, I'll tell you, it's pretty crazy to write full time these days. Not only are you writing, but you are promoting. It just comes with the territory. I've learned that I write in the morning. That's the best time for me. It doesn't have to be everyone. And in the afternoon, I will do some promotion, or I will do research. There's a lot of research involved in writing. Writing, I feel, is more difficult than you think it's going to be when you start. There's a learning curve, and gradually you get into the flow of it. So that's my routine. I write in the mornings for 4 hours or so every day.
Wow.
And sometimes I'm up in the middle of the night. So I'm sure other writers can attest to what I'm going to say. Your characters, they start to feel like they're coming alive after you start writing about your characters. And they will even wake you up at night to say, this is not what I would have said. So, or
yes,
something to that effect. Or it's so hard to get to sleep because you're thinking, it's like it's in your head, and your characters are saying, okay, well, I think this should be changed, and I think this should be changed, and you're trying to go to sleep. Meanwhile, you have all these voices in your head.
Right.
And so that's when I get up, and even if there's something to be said about getting up at 3 o'clock in the morning when the house is totally quiet and I can just come into my writing room and no one is awake. No, and it's just quiet and you can just write. And I've learned that rather than try to force myself to go to sleep, which is an impossibility, I get up and I come into my writing room and I do what I need to do. And then when I go back to my bedroom, I can go to sleep easily. But and it's funny, at the beginning, my husband, when I started doing this now and then, at the beginning, my husband would wake up thinking something was wrong. Now he doesn't even wake up. I just get up and I come in here and he'll just say in the morning, if I look tired, he'll just say, "Oh, were you up in the middle of the night again?"
I love it.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so fun.
So after a while, writing just becomes part of your entire life. So even when you're in a restaurant or when you're on the street, you notice things about people, you listen to how people speak, and you use that in your stories.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love it.
Writing is wonderful. It's difficult, but it's worth it. So I think writers should know that too.
Oh, what a great, great message. I
Yeah.
love that so much. And I also love that you have structure. And also, as a writing coach, I always tell people to find out their rhythm when your highest energy is for your greatest brain function for creativity and productivity. And you know yours, which is awesome. Are there
Yes.
any other little rituals that you do? Like you have to have your coffee or you
I
have to have a
do.
certain book? What are your rituals?
I'm in the sun here. I
love it.
do. So I have to have my coffee first. That's a requirement. The one quirk that I have is I love to write night scenes at night because, as you can tell, the sun's coming in here. So it's hard for me to write night scenes if the sun is blasting on my face. But if I save the night scene until night, as quirky as it sounds, it just gets me into the scene a lot easier. If it's dark outside, then I just think, okay. And the only other, I think a lot of authors listen to music. When I wrote my book, The Somewhere I See You Again, because it was set in 1971, I have a lot of references in it to the songs of the time. And when I was writing it, I would just play whatever song I mentioned in the book. I would just play it for that while I was writing that scene, so I could get into the whole groove, as they would have said back then.
I love it. It's so interesting because music of that era totally takes you back.
It does. The music of the 70s is wonderful, and I'm sure I'm biased because I lived there then, but it is
right.
But it's wonderful. It is. It's terrific music. Absolutely.
So when we were talking earlier, you said this shocking thing that the 1970s are considered historical fiction, which is mind-blowing because it's not that. When I think historic, I think 1800s, or before. So can you talk about that, Nancy?
Yes, I thought historical was the 1800s, beginning of the 1900s, maybe even to the mid-century. But when I went to a group of writers, there was an agent there, and I mentioned my book to her, and I just said to her, it's written, it's taking place in 1971, and I was so excited talking to her, and she said, I don't do historical, and I don't represent historical authors that write books from the past. And then I said, but it's not historical. It's takes place in 1971. And she said, that's a historical novel you're writing. And so,
wow.
So I asked her then, how far does it go back? And I'm pretty sure she said it goes like at least to 1980 something. To her, that was historical, going back so far. And that's another thing too. So she said, I said 1971, and she said, yes, but you're going back 50 years. And that's true. So that puts it in the right context if you think about it that way. She said modern stories were easier to get published, so modern day stories. And that wasn't very nice for me to hear because I had spent 2 years writing my book. And so when she said that, I thought, oh no, what have I done? But it ended up getting published by a wonderful publisher. So
Good, good. That's a great, great tip for aspiring writers that you might hear a no from one place, or you might hear a discouraging trend report, but believe in yourself, believe in your project. You created this, it came from the heart and soul for a reason, right?
right, I agree with you. And also I think new writers have to know going in that there's going to be rejections. And at first, I'm sure almost every author takes it personally like I did. I thought, oh my goodness, you're rejecting whatever it was at the time. You're rejecting my short story. And then I would send it somewhere else, and then it would get rejected. And it's the same with novels. Your book, it's not just going to be picked up immediately. There's normally rejections that you just have to, it's painful, but you just have to accept the rejections as part of the learning curve. And there is that learning curve. And I'm sure it doesn't matter what I write now. If I wrote a short story, I would expect now to get rejections. And even though it would sting, which it does, and I'd probably go moping around the house for a day or so, but then that's just the way it is. Rejections are just part of the writing journey. Absolutely.
Yes. Yeah, it's really hard to get your first rejections or any rejections.
That's true. It's hard.
It is. So, Nancy, that gorgeous quilt behind you, I think people watching are going to want to know the story behind it, and they're going to ask, did she make that? So,
I might be creative in writing, but I'm certainly not creative in making quilts, although this is a beautiful quilt. My daughter-in-law, I'm so thankful to her, made this quilt for me. And it's actually, the theme is called Flower Child. So she wrote it because knowing I wrote about the 1970s, so the theme is Flower Child. And if you can see it up close, it's all flowers, and it is themed to the 1970s.
I love it.
Yeah, I'm thrilled to have that. But I have it there. Normally I don't, but I have it there because behind it is a big whiteboard. And that's where I put all the things that have to do with my writing, whether it be a writing group is meeting at a specific time, or something to do with research, or even awards that are coming up. Maybe there's awards ceremony or awards are going to be given out, that type of thing. So I just write it, and I give myself deadlines for my writing on my whiteboard, because I'm a terrible procrastinator and with my writing, and it might not seem like it, but I am at times a terrible procrastinator. So if I give myself a deadline, then it's easier to follow. This is where you should be at this specific day. And so try to do that so that you don't fall behind, because with writing, I've discovered it's really easy to fall behind. And one day becomes 2 days, and then 2 days, it's 3 days. And then another day I'll make excuses. Like, for instance, I have to do the housework, or I have to take the dogs to the vet, or so, because it's difficult to keep writing and writing and writing. And after a while, your mind just goes, okay, you need to take a break.
Mm-hmm.
You need to just take a break and then come back so you can figure out exactly what you want to write. And it helps, but if I extend it, then it's harder to get back into it.
Yeah. Yes, that's a great, great, great message. Really is hard, but fortunately, it sounds like you've got a really good rhythm going, and that keeps your momentum propelling. So, what's your biggest writing dream? What's your big goal?
Oh my. I set goals for myself right at the beginning, so 8 years ago. And I'm bringing in my husband again to this because he's so supportive, but I said, okay, all I really want to do is to have a short story published. And then after I had my first short story published, then it was, okay, all I really want to have are 2 short stories published, and then I'll be happy with what I've accomplished. But then it never, then it was another short story, and then it was my first book, and then it was another short story, and then it was my second book, and now I'm writing my third book. So I've already lived a lot of my dream, to be quite honest. But I'm going to keep going. And with I think any author would agree to that. What you want as a writer, first of all, is for your work to mean something and to mean something to your reader, something emotional. I think every author wants to touch their readers emotionally, which is what I absolutely try to do.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's absolutely true. But other than that, you want to be recognized for your work. So going to the future, my dream is to continue to be recognized for my work. I've been so fortunate so far, and I understand that I'm so fortunate, but I still would love my work to be recognized even to a greater extent. And with my third book, I would love that to be recognized by the younger children, to read that and feel, even as a child that is 9 to 12, they have so many emotions, and I would like to touch them as well emotionally. So that's the big thing. I feel like I've accomplished much of my dream, to be honest, but I just want to continue and see how far I can take this.
Beautiful. That is wonderful, Nancy. I love it. So you're enjoying the journey too?
I am. My husband now and then says, are you having fun, Nancy? And I'm thinking, is that how you can describe writing? I don't know if any writer would just say, it's like being on a roller coaster ride. I'm having so much fun. And it's not like that with writing. First of all, as I mentioned before, it's difficult. It invades your mind incredibly. So I can't say I am enjoying the ride. I will say that. And it is a roller coaster ride. So writing is, somebody loves your work and they publish it, and then, somebody rejects you. And then another publisher loves your work, and you get a nice letter from them, and then you get a rejection letter. So that's what it's felt like to me through the past 8 years. It's up, and I'm thrilled. I'm ecstatic because this is what I've wished for. And then something happens, and then it's like, oh dear, that's not working. So that's what it feels like to me. It is a journey. It's an up and down journey. It's not totally fun. I think sometimes it's heart-wrenching. But if I look over the past 8 years, it was absolutely worth it. It was absolutely worth every course I took, every meeting I went to, every line I wrote, every word I fussed over. I think it's been absolutely worth it.
Oh, I love that so much. So, Nancy, in closing, what is the biggest tip you'd like to offer aspiring writers out there right now?
Oh, there's a question for you. Okay, well, here's something I'll say. When I first started writing, I would say exactly what you just said, an aspiring writer. So if anybody asked me what I was doing since I retired, I didn't go into everything. I just said, I'm an aspiring writer. I'm aspiring to be a writer. And then someone once said to me, but you're writing. So you're not aspiring. You are already a writer. So I would tell writers that are just starting their writing journey that if you're writing, you are definitely a writer. Even if it's not published, you're still a writer. You're writing. And of course, the dream is to get published. But even if you just want to write for your family, or you just want to write for yourself, you're still a writer. And the aspiration is already there. So you're just a writer. That's what you are, that you are already there. I guess that's what I'd like to say mainly.
I love that. So we are going to, from here on out, strike through aspiring and just say writer.
Exactly.
Yay, Nancy. Where can people find you and learn more about you?
I have a website, and it's nancythorne.com. And I'm on social media. I'm on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. You can find me anywhere. But if you go to my website, then everything is listed there. I also have a blog. If anyone is interested in reading my blog, I have a blog that I try to keep up to date as much as possible.
Beautiful. And where can people buy your books?
My books at Amazon, and I'm in Canada, so it would be amazon.ca. But in the States, of course, it's amazon.com, and it's for sale online at Target and Barnes & Noble.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you.
That's wonderful. I'm so happy for you.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
So you're welcome. So thank you for joining us here on Writer Talks, Nancy Thorne. You're amazing.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Celebrate.
Woo!
And thank you, all of you, for joining us tonight, where you got to meet the author, Nancy Thorne, also winner of 2 short stories in our 2020 short story contests here at Two Sisters Writing and Publishing. And she will be published in our 2020 anthology of international writers. Very exciting. So please do give us a thumbs up to like this video, because she shared so many wonderful tips that can help you as a writer, not aspiring, but a writer. And also, please visit her website. I'll put the link in the description box so you can learn more about her and order her books. Support her as an amazing writer, because she's very talented and it's really, really enjoyable to read her stories. And also, please subscribe to the channel, drop a comment here if you have any questions, and remember, keep writing and happy writing. We'll see you next time.